So before I actually start reading, I just want to show you what it sort of looks like when you flip to chapter 1, obviously. So this is the cover, which I showed in my other video. You got the title page right here. Dedication. I dedicated it to Gracie, of course, because she's Gracie. And then you got my table of contents, skippity skip. There are lots of chapters because they're all sort of short. And then this book is split into 4 different parts. Each part has a different Demons, Imagine Dragons, like 4-line passage thing, because that is the song that inspired a lot of stuff in this book. That's always the song that I would listen to when I was looking for inspiration, didn't know what to write, had writer's block. It's the anthem, and I refuse to let it get turned into a movie ever if this is not the credits song. So yeah. And then we got to chapter 1, which is narrated by Blair, and this is her artwork. My black lace-up high top shuffled along the cobblestone sidewalk, the wind blowing my pink and violet dipped hair so it formed a cloud around me. I swatted at my bangs, trying to keep them out of my eyes. I reluctantly rolled my suitcase behind me, catching on grooves and patches of weeds. I yanked the wheel of my suitcase out of a small ditch in the stones, nearly crashing into the large gate that provided an entrance into the building surrounded by towering stone walls. A giggle sounded from behind me. Need some help with that? My best friend Diabla asked, picking up my tattered suitcase. Her chocolate brown curls were swept into 2 pigtails, and her bright fire-toned eyes glowed in the fog. Thanks, I mumbled, untying the black ribbon that was wrapped around my wrists and gathered my hair into a messy ponytail. The large iron gate stood high above us, flowers and vines etched into the metal. The thick fog made it all seem more like a haunted mansion than a school. You ready? Diablo asked, giving me a sweet smile. Ready as I'll ever be, I replied glumly. I squinted my lavender eyes, trying to make out something from behind the fog, but all I could see was gray nothingness, as welcoming as a closet full of spiders. That's the spirit, Blair Bear, Diablo squealed, snapping me out of my thoughts. Now, I know you're disappointed about having to go to Demonium Excelsum instead of Somber, but it won't be as long as you think. At the end of the year, we'll take the tests and get out of here. For the mystery of whatever this is supposed to be, to the glistening halls of School of Monsters Better Environment Reformatory. She held up her hands dramatically. Interesting classes, fancy dorm rooms, deliciously cute monster boys. She wiggled her eyebrows and I rolled my eyes. Are you trying to make me hate being here even more? Besides, what if we don't pass the test? Diablo sighed. All you do is worry, Bee. It's a year. It can't be that bad. But if we don't pass the freshman test, then it's 4 years. You can't take it again until you're a senior if you fail. I rambled nervously. Diablo rolled her eyes. It'll be fine. Just study up and make some friends. We'll be out of here in no time. I'm not good at making friends, Diablo. It's a big school. You'll find someone who can tolerate you. Hey, I grumbled. Diablo snickered and draped an arm around my shoulders. Even if you don't find somebody, you have me, and that counts for something, right? I smiled, giving her a hug. Thanks for coming with me. What are best friends for? Also, I couldn't stay another second back in Maryland with my dad. The chance to go to an actual school with actual physical human beings is an opportunity I am no way turning down, no matter the circumstances. She beamed at me and started over to the small gray box on the wall next to the gate. She flipped open the cover to reveal a red button labeled Ring for Service. A screechy chime echoed through the empty street. Diablo cringed, closing the cover. We stood in silence, the minutes ticking by. Diablo squinted at the box, flipping the lid open again. Maybe it's broken, she shrugged. Should we try knocking? I sidestepped her and peered through the bars. Hello? I called. Anybody home? The second the words left my lips, 2 piercing red eyes appeared in the dark fog. I stifled a scream and darted backwards, slipping on a patch of moss. Diablo grabbed my arm to steady me. I caught my balance as the gate creaked open, a gray wolf girl stepping out of the fog. Her silver fur shone in the light, a pair of half-moon spectacles magnifying her ruby red eyes. She couldn't have been more than 25, but her tailored suit and strict expression made her look older. She pulled a tablet out of her large pocket and made a few taps on the screen. Names, please, she mumbled in a monotone voice. I glanced over at Diablo, but she was too busy taking our identification papers out of her designer handbag. I'm Diablo Elias Inferno, daughter of Archibald and Rosalinda Inferno, half-blooded devil. The wolf made rapid taps on her tablet screen. 16 years old, first year? She asked. Diablo nodded. The wolf jotted more information into the device. You? She inquired, looking up at me. Oh, Blair Lucinda Charms? I mumbled, daughter of Morgana and James Charms, pure-blooded witch. I gulped nervously, my parents' names feeling like acid on my tongue. Diablo shot me a worried look, but the wolf just nodded before tapping obnoxiously again. Follow me, she muttered, swinging the gate open with an ear-splitting creak. Diablo and I glanced at each other before scurrying in after her. I'm Lucille Silver, Vice Principal of Demonium Excelsum. I'm in charge of everything and anything having to do with registration and technical information, so if you need anything, ask for Lucille in the main office. Thank you, but where is that exactly? Diablo laughed awkwardly. Lucille pulled 2 shiny black folders out of her jacket. How so much could fit inside the pocket was unreal, but I ignored the fact. Most of the time the answer tended to be magic, so I had learned not to question things. The maps are in these folders along with your orientation slips and all necessary passes and paperwork you'll need. She was stopped by a faint beeping coming from the earpiece tucked beside her dark hair. A scratchy voice came out of it, but it was too muffled to make out. Of course, Lucille nodded, despite the fact that the person on the other side of the feed couldn't see her. I'll be right there. She clicked a button on her earpiece and turned her gaze back to Diablo and I. Sorry to cut this short, girls. I'm needed in the north wing. Your dorms are in the east. It's all written on your key, which are in those folders. She tapped her red nail against the shiny surface. Good luck. Hope you find everything okay. She straightened her spectacles and darted up the stone stairs, leading to a set of enormous double doors. I craned my neck back so I could see the building better. All around gray stone with cubic towers poking out in a few different places. The grounds were mostly silent except for a few groups of students here and there, fixing their bicycle tires or chatting beneath the trees. A few started to stare at us, and I inched closer to Diablo. It looks like a castle, she beamed, her eyes shining. Yeah, a castle you go to if you have a death wish, I mumbled, crossing my arms. Diablo rolled her eyes again and tossed her glossy pigtails behind her tan shoulders. She looked down at the black folder Lucille had given to us. The Bonnie McCelsum administration packet was printed on the front in block gray letters. I peered over her shoulder to see what was inside. She flipped through a variety of papers and envelopes until she found a small silver key and what looked like a map, printed in inky black and white. Attached to the key was a heavy plastic rectangle with the words Dorm 12C, East Wing. Diablo met my eyes and grinned. Looks like we have a room to find. This is Diablo's artwork, Chapter 2. After what felt like hours of searching, but couldn't have been more than 30 minutes, we finally found the East Wing. Blair leaned against the rough stone wall, pulling the loose black ribbon out of her hair. Black strands fell to her shoulders, the pink and purple dipped ends popping against her dark gray tank top. This is hopeless, Blair complained, her eyes shaded by her jagged bangs. We're never gonna find this goddamn room. She kicked her rugged suitcase, which toppled over and crashed into a suit of armor that stood menacingly next to a covered window. I cringed and picked up the knight's helmet, which had toppled to the floor. I set it back on the suit's neck and turned to Blair, who was still moping on the crimson carpet. Oh, cheer up, I exclaimed, crouching down next to her. Something always goes wrong on the first day. That's what makes it a first day. Blair stood up angrily, leaving me on the floor. Don't you get it, Dee? We've only been here, what, an hour? Met one person? I already hate it here. She wiped her eye with the back of her hand, smearing some of her mascara. You know why I need to get into somber, Diablo. This is more than just some speed bump to me. Excuse me. A small voice squeaked from behind us. We turned to see a petite girl with blue eyes so big they took the focus away from everything else on her face. Her hair was a whitish silver and tied into braids. I don't mean to interrupt, but do you need some help getting to your rooms? I'm new too, but I have a good sense of direction. Her voice sounded like it could belong to a small child, fading as she talked. She clasped her oddly gloved hands behind her back and stared at her toes. How did you know we were lost? Or knew, for that matter? Blair snapped, trying to wipe away the smudged mascara. Blair? I hissed, not wanting to upset the already timid girl, but instead her small lips curled into a minuscule smile. Well, for starters, you have suitcases, and not that many people choose to spend their time hanging around in boring, deserted hallways. Oh, and you also have an administration packet in your hand. You don't need to be a mind reader to figure that one out. The girl paused, the smile fading from her baby-like face. She scrunched her eyebrows as if what she said just troubled her, but then shook her head and looked once again down at her toes. Blair blushed, embarrassed, setting the packet on top of her suitcase. I'm sorry, I just really don't want to be here right now. The girl smiled slightly. Don't we all? I'm sure the majority of us would rather not go to school at all. Blair looked up from under her bangs. That's not what I meant. It didn't need to be. She locked her eyes with Blair's, a glint in the blue orbs. She was strange, in a creepy yet cute sort of way. What room are you assigned to? She asked, switching her gaze over to me. What? I said, startled. Oh, right. I pulled the bulky key out of my pocket. 12H. The girl's eyes lit up. For real? That's my room. A creepy giggle escaped her mouth. Blair looked over at me, her eyes wide, as if to say, we're sleeping in the same room as her? I gulped, but gave the girl a smile anyways. Great, I'm sure you know where we're going now, I said, lifting my suitcase off the floor. Sure do, she said. It's just a couple halls down. She took a few steps towards the right before stopping and slapping her forehead with her own hand. Gosh, I'm so stupid, I forgot to introduce myself, she exclaimed rather bashfully, tucking some stray hairs behind her small ears. I'm Cora Needle. Oh, and that's Cora with a K, not a C. People confuse that a lot. Needle? Blair interrupted. Like sewing needle? Cora blushed. Yeah, it's weird, I know. She messed with the edge of her striped shirt, suddenly looking uncomfortable. Rude, I hissed at Blair, who replied with a dirty look. Anyway, it's very nice to meet you, Cora. I'm Diablo Inferno. Gerban O, the fancy one with 2 dots on top. Cora smiled sweetly and turned to Blair, who looked up awkwardly. Blair, she mumbled. Hi. Cora grinned and cocked her head to the side, pointing down the hallway. The room is this way. We followed Cora awkwardly down the corridor, which was completely empty of people except for us. What were you doing walking alone in the hallway, anyway? I asked. Cora kept her gaze forward. Let's just say I don't like being in small quarters for long periods of time. My childhood wasn't that grand. She stopped walking, Blair and I almost face-planting at the action. I regained my balance and turned my gaze to her large eyes staring intently at the floor, as if they could give her the answers of life. Are you okay? Blair asked, raising an eyebrow at Cora. She nodded her head. I'm sorry, I do that quite often. I just need to The corners of her mouth rose to form a forced smile, and she glanced back at us. Smiling hides the pain. She kept smiling, her shiny white teeth plastered into a creepy grin. Blair and I glanced at each other before smiling back awkwardly. Cora continued to lead the way, turning her gaze away from us. Smiling hides the pain, smiling hides the pain, she muttered under her breath. Blair tapped my shoulder. She's crazy, she mouthed. I shrugged. After a few more minutes of turning down hallways, identical to the ones before, Cora stopped at a smooth black door, identical to every other one beside it, minus the silver plaque that read 12H. Cora pulled a bobby pin out of her platinum hair and shoved it through the lock, wiggling it through the keyhole. Don't you have a key? Blair asked, one hand resting on her hip and another carrying her suitcase. Cora rolled her eyes. Of course I do, but what's the fun in that? She rotated the pin to the right and the door clicked open. Blair and I shuffled in behind her, looking around the small room. 2 wooden bunk beds were shoved against one wall, 4 identical wardrobes on the other. What really caught my eye was a large marble vanity, standing tall in the corner of the room. It seemed so out of place in the simple bedroom, but that almost made it look even more beautiful. I set down my suitcase and walked over to it, kneeling to see my reflection in the shimmering glass. Well, isn't this— Don't touch it, a raspy voice sounded from behind me. A girl appeared in the mirror frame and I turned around to look at her. My heart sunk to my knees when we made eye contact, because visually she looked slightly terrifying. Her ringlets were bright red, so bright it was almost unnatural, and they lay limply on her shoulders over her worn punk t-shirt. She was sickly pale, even paler than Cora, and her maroon-colored eyes looked menacing. What was really terrifying was her right eye. A deep scar ran straight across her face, cutting through the milky white of her eyeball, patches of blue and red surrounding her dilated pupils. Don't touch my mirror, she said, shoving past me to wipe off my fingerprint. She then wiped her hands on her torn jeans, a disgusted look on her face. Marlin, Cora squeaked, and I assumed that was the redhead's name. She spun around and shot me a cheesy fake smile. Oh, I'm sorry. Was that rude? She snapped, her smile wavering. The girl walked over to one of the wardrobes and pulled out a black leather jacket so quickly that she sent the hanger swinging off the rod. You two must be the other roommates. Rule number 1 of dorming with me, don't touch my mirror. She zipped the jacket around her pale figure and started to rummage through a folder on the table. This is Marlin, Cora exclaimed awkwardly. We were on the train together on the way here. Worst 3 hours of my life, she snarled, angrily throwing papers onto the floor as she looked for something. Cora crossed her arms. Inviting, Marlin. Just honest, she said, pulling out a crisp white slip from the back of the folder. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to head down to orientation. She pulled a red pen out of her pocket and held it between her teeth. She glanced coldly at me. I better not find any more fingerprints on my vanity, Diabla, she said, pushing through Cora and Blair to strut out the door. How did you— It's on your sweater. I glanced down at my plum-colored cardigan, the patch reading Diablo Inferno. I whipped my head back into the hall, catching a glimpse of Marlin's vibrant red curls before she stormed around the corner. I'm pretty sure she's always like that, Cora mumbled from behind us. She hasn't been that nice to me either, so don't take it personally. I nodded, my eyes not leaving the now empty hall. I got here early this morning, so I'm already unpacked. I'll give you a little while to get organized. Meet you at the stairs in 20? She asked. Blair shrugged, throwing her suitcase onto the bare top bunk. Sure, I guess. Thanks, Cora. Cora smiled before walking out of the dorm, closing the door behind her. Do my ears deceive me, or did Blair Charms just say thanks? I teased, unzipping my suitcase. Blair rolled her eyes, climbing up the thin metal ladder that led to the top bed. Funny, Dee. Am I the only one who's insanely creeped out by both our roommates? I mean, Cora's like one of those creepy talking baby dolls, and Marlin's totally emo. I shook my head. You always judge a book by its cover, Blair. We haven't even given them a chance yet. Without Cora, we never would have found this room, and I'm sure Marlin's just one of those possessive, antisocial types. Blair swung her legs over the bunk so that they hung in front of me. I stood up so I could face her. Oh, come on, you're too optimistic, Blair scoffed. You aren't even a tiny bit suspicious? Tell me you at least got a weird vibe from Cora. I shrugged, pulling clothes out of my suitcase and placing them on my bed. Not so much from Cora herself, but from her hands. Blair raised an eyebrow at me. What about them? I don't know, it's just she was wearing gloves. Tiny white silk ones. It was weird. I mean, like, it's August. Who the hell wears gloves in August? Except old ladies and ringmasters. Or haunted porcelain dolls come to life. Blair cackled, forming her hands into claws. I laughed. Stop it, I'm serious. I'm serious too. I'm a witch, Dee. You're a freaking devil. Fire and pitchforks, the whole shebang. How many times do I have to tell you that the pitchforks are stereotypes? My point is that anything is possible. You never know in a place like this. I sighed, setting down a leather skirt I was folding. I hate it when you're right. I'm always right, darling, she replied smugly, hopping down from the bunk, a stack of clothes in hand. Anyway, I really don't feel like folding t-shirts right now, and I think my stomach is going to eat itself if I don't get some food in the next 10 minutes. I laughed, tossing a pair of pajama bottoms onto my bed. Well, all right then. Let's get the school year started. That's all you get today. You have to buy it to read the rest of it. Haha, cheeky little promo teaser. Yeah, so once again, links are in the description. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments what you thought, and if you plan on getting it, if you've read it, if you any sort of input you want to give me, I would really appreciate it. So thank you. See you next time. Comment, rate, subscribe, and share, and go buy my book.